Today, I'm taking you into the world of two classic, spooky, and creepy stories. But before we dive into the mysteries, let me ask you this. Are you a fan of the weird, the dark, and the unexplainable? If the answer is yes, then congratulations, you've come to the right place. Here, we share unique, haunting, and surprising stories. We post new content every week. So if you love mysteries and the creepy, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss anything. Now, turn off the lights, get comfortable, and join me in the darkness to discover today's stories. One quiet evening in February 2011, Yang, a man in his 30s, was having dinner in his small house in a rural village in China. Around the table were 5 elderly aunts who had lived with him and whom he had cared for every day. The dinner was conducted in complete silence, a common occurrence in their family. For Yang, this silence was not awkward but rather peaceful. Born with a disability that left him almost unable to speak and blind in one eye, Yang often endured teasing and bullying from others. These experiences had made him a withdrawn person who avoided social interactions. But with his aunts, he felt no pressure. Yang knew that these loved ones not only accepted him but also loved him unconditionally. This gave him a sense of comfort and freedom to be himself. While he was quiet, small acts like taking care of his aunts became his way of expressing his affection. After dinner, Yang stood up, cleared the table, and helped one aunt up to her bedroom. He arranged the bedding, making sure everything was comfortable before going out to help the next aunt. As he was walking down the stairs, an unusual sound rang out. A siren broke the quiet atmosphere. Yang stopped, a feeling of unease rising. He listened carefully, trying to determine the source of the sound. At that moment, everything in the house was as quiet as if it had held its breath. The village where Yang lived was located in a remote rural area of China, so remote that there was no local police force. What was even more special was that in his entire life, Yang had never heard a siren or seen a police car. To him, it was completely foreign. So when the sirens broke the silence of the evening, he couldn't help but be curious. Yang, who was preparing to help his next aunt up to her room, decided to step outside to find out what was going on. As soon as he stood in front of his house, he looked down at the hill where his house was located. From this position, he could clearly see a rare sight: 2 police cars parked at the bottom of the hill, about 600 feet away, with their lights flashing in the quiet night. This was unprecedented in his small village, and clearly something important was taking place. Curiosity urged him to do something different from his usual routine. Instead of going back home, Yang decided to walk towards the cars to find out. He started walking down the small path that led from his house to the bottom of the hill, but before he could go far, Yang suddenly stopped. A strange feeling crept into his heart, both nervous and anxious, as if something unusual was waiting ahead. Duong stood still, keeping a safe distance from the police cars. He did not want to intervene and, more importantly, he did not want to face the police. With a disability that prevented him from communicating easily, the thought of talking to strangers, especially police, made him afraid that he would be ridiculed or misunderstood. So he chose to observe from a distance, hiding in the shadows of the trail leading down the hill. From his position, Duong could see 2 policemen talking to an elderly man, a local farmer. The farmer was sitting on the ground, his head in his hands, sobbing uncontrollably. He tried to tell the policeman something, but his sobs made his words incoherent and difficult to understand. One of the policemen, looking calmer and more professional, gently asked him to calm down. Stop for a moment. Take a deep breath and tell me everything from the beginning. We're here to help you." The farmer took a deep breath, trying to control his emotions. After a while, he looked up, his eyes still red, but his voice clearer. I have to tell you about a terrible nightmare I had a week ago," he began, his voice trembling. Yang stood there, listening intently from a distance. His curiosity was heightened, but he didn't dare come closer. Whatever the farmer was about to tell him had to be serious enough to warrant calling the police, a rare occurrence in this peaceful village. The dreams that haunted him constantly left him, scared and confused. Every night, he saw his mother, shrouded in darkness, screaming for help. But when he tried to run to help her, the shadow would swallow her up and she would disappear again. At first, he thought they were just fleeting nightmares, perhaps due to psychological instability. But after a week of facing the same scene in his dreams, he began to feel unusual. The farmer said he became more anxious every day. It was not just a dream, it made him feel like something dark was lurking. And then, the farmer continued, his voice trembling, "I decided to do something." He said that on Saturday night, after waking up from the terrifying dream, he mustered up the courage to go to his mother's house at the end of the village, even though it was late at night and everything was dead silent. "But when I got there," he paused, his voice trailing off, "the front door of your house was wide open." The farmer paused, his hands shaking as he tried to continue. "I went in, called my mother, but no one answered. The house was dark, and it felt cold. I looked around the house, but my mother, she wasn't there." He took a deep breath and continued. "Then I found something I never wanted to see." The farmer described finding his mother's shawl, a shawl she always wore, left on the floor. It was covered in a strange black substance, like oil, but it smelled strange and cold. "It felt like something not of this world was there," he whispered. "And from that night on, my dreams stopped. But instead, I felt like something was watching me." To investigate whether the old woman had left the village voluntarily, perhaps to visit relatives or to do some personal business, the remaining team would search the surrounding areas of the village, focusing on the dense forests and less traveled trails. As the police left, Yang remained on the hill, watching the police lights disappear into the night. He felt uneasy, not only because of the strange events that were taking place, but also because the village, which had always been quiet, had become mysterious and full of fear. A few hours later, the local police team returned to report. The city search party had found no sign of the old woman. However, the village search party had discovered something strange. A trail leading deep into the forest had old, faint footprints, as if someone had walked through it a few days ago. Nearby, they also found a small piece of cloth, which looked like part of the old woman's shirt, caught on a low tree branch. The police decided to expand the search area into the deep forest. The farmer, upon receiving the news, became more panicked than ever. He begged the police to let him join the search, but they asked him to stay home so as not to cause more trouble. However, the farmer could not sit still. When night fell, he quietly left the house, carrying a flashlight and a small knife, deciding to look for his mother himself. Yang, unable to bear his curiosity, secretly followed him. The forest at night became more terrifying than ever. The chirping of insects mixed with the rustling of the wind through the trees. Both of them, despite being far apart, felt a strange presence in the air, as if someone or something was watching them. While going deeper into the forest, the farmer discovered something horrifying, a large hole, covered by dry leaves and branches. Next to the hole, there was a silver bracelet that his mother often wore. Yang, standing from afar, also felt a chill down his spine as he watched this scene. Could this hole have anything to do with the old lady's disappearance? And what was waiting for them in the deep woods? Would you like me to continue the story or add any other details? As the police moved deeper into the house, the feeling of unease grew. The light from their flashlights shone on the mottled walls and rotten ceiling, reflecting an eerie atmosphere. Finally, they came to a small room at the end of the house, the door ajar. One of the officers gently pushed it open, the light of the flashlight shining inside. This room was different from the rest of the house, strangely clean and neatly arranged, as if it did not belong to the messy house they had just passed through. On the table, there was a small box placed neatly. One of the officers walked over and carefully opened the box. Inside was what looked like a small wooden statue, carved into the image of a woman, kneeling, her hands raised in prayer. The statue had the same facial features as the farmer's mother, which made the officers feel more uneasy than ever. Suddenly, from behind, they heard a slight noise, like something being dragged across the floor. All the officers turned immediately, their flashlights shining throughout the room. But there was no one. A deadly silence fell, only the sound of their heavy breathing. They decided to check the other rooms in the house. As they stepped out into the hallway, another door opened softly, as if someone or something had been standing behind it. One of the officers, with his gun ready, slowly approached, while the others kept their distance and shone their flashlights on the door. When the door was fully opened, inside was a staircase leading down to the basement. This basement was completely dark, and there was a musty smell. One of the officers suggested calling for backup, but the squad leader decided that they would continue their investigation before waiting for help. They began to descend the stairs, each step heavy and careful. When they reached the bottom of the stairs, the flashlight beam revealed a sight that horrified them. The basement was filled with other wooden statues, each one representing a different woman, and all in a posture of prayer or fear. Some of the statues bore traces of recent carving. In the center of the room, a large table was set with wood carving tools and an old mirror. On the mirror, scrawled in a dark red liquid that appeared to be blood, were the words, "The price of silence." The police were now certain that they had entered a story even more terrifying than they had imagined. A bigger question began to arise in their minds. Who was Yang really, and what did he have to do with the disappearance of the farmer's mother? The last woman found among Yang's ants. As the police got closer to each woman on the bed, they noticed something strange. They were all motionless, showing no signs of consciousness. They were still breathing, but slowly and steadily, as if they were in a deep trance. The police called out to them, shaking their shoulders, but no one responded. When the flashlight beam illuminated the face of the last woman, they realized it was the mother of the farmer who had been reported missing. But she looked pale, weak, and had been there for some time. The police immediately called an ambulance and asked the investigation team to continue searching the area. One of the officers discovered a small drawer under the bed. When they opened it, they found small vials containing an unknown liquid, along with an old notebook with notes scribbled in a language they did not immediately recognize. The notebook contained strange diagrams, drawings that looked like charms or rituals, and the names of the women written next to the unknown characters. At this moment, Yang suddenly appeared at the back door of the house. He stood there, silent and expressionless. To the surprise of the police, Yang did not run away but slowly walked in. He said in a calm, cold voice, "I knew you guys would come. My aunts and that mother, they're fine. They're in the best condition to escape the chaotic world out there. I just want to protect them, you know?" The police immediately placed Yang under arrest, and took him away from the scene. Meanwhile, they requested further investigation into the strange liquid bottles and notebooks. A team of medical experts later concluded that the women, including the farmer's mother, had been affected by a powerful anesthetic believed to have come from the liquid bottles found in the room. Fortunately, they were all saved and gradually recovered after treatment. However, the big question remains unanswered. What exactly did Yang do to them, and what did the mysterious notebook and diagrams mean? A more extensive investigation begins, and the scary thing is that all signs point to this being just the surface of something much larger, much darker. Yang is a lonely man living in a small village where he is shunned and treated badly by everyone. While most of the villagers do not care about him, there are 5 elderly women who treat him well. Although they are not related by blood, Yang considers them his true family, calling them aunt with all respect and love. These women died of natural causes, but for Yang, it was an unacceptable loss. They were the only people who ever cared about him, and when they were gone, he felt empty, sad, and extremely lonely. Unable to face the reality, Yang decided to dig up their bodies and bring them back to his home, essentially a small cave he had renovated to live in. There, he continued to care for the bodies as if they were still alive, preserving them carefully, as a way to cling to the memories of the only people who ever loved him. Yang's actions were only discovered when a farmer in the village visited his mother's grave and found the coffin empty. After having nightmares about his mother for many nights, the farmer reported it to the police. A witness revealed that they had seen Yang carrying the bodies up the hill. The police went to investigate and discovered the terrifying truth in Yang's cave. The bodies of all 5 women were kept as intact as possible. Yang was arrested, but was later sent to a mental hospital for treatment. The bodies were reburied with honor, and the farmer was finally at peace with his mother's resting place. One day, a farmer in the village decided to check on his mother's grave after having strange nightmares in which he saw his mother missing. When he arrived, he found his mother's coffin empty. Terrified, he believed that someone had stolen the bodies and quickly reported it to the police. During the investigation, the police received a strange clue from a local resident who saw Yang, a man living in isolation on the hill, carrying a dead body up to his house. The house they were referring to was not a normal house, but a small cave that Yang had converted into a shelter. In the cave, he used a few planks to make a temporary floor and set up a few simple beds. The police went to check and discovered a gruesome scene. The bodies of the farmer's mother, along with those of other women, were kept as intact as possible. Yang had dug up their graves and brought them back to his cave to take care of them, because in his mind, they were still alive and the ones he loved the most that he could not bear to lose. Yang was arrested for his actions, but was later sent to a mental hospital for treatment. The bodies were taken away by the police and reburied with honor. As his mother's body was laid to rest, the farmer no longer had nightmares. He felt like his mother had finally found peace. Thank you so much for watching. We'd love to hear what you thought of today's episode, so leave your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget we have hundreds of other great videos waiting for you to explore. If you need a suggestion from me, this one is a great one to watch next. Check it out! And as always, see you next time.